Last week, I reported how the real estate industry is in a depression and overrun with monopolies. Big news this week I didn't anticipate. Redfin, one of the two monopolists, along with Zillow being the other, Redfin, which has been losing money nonstop, has never made a profit, has only disrupted the industry while losing money and not paying federal taxes, is being purchased by Rocket Mortgage. So now we have a new monopolist buying Redfin and trying to leverage that power even more. Is it good or bad for consumers? I'll give you a hint. It's probably bad. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the market stats as to where we are right now so we can understand the market and where we're headed. I always say that in an economy, you have two major parts. You have the supply and demand. Now, demand is measured in real estate by interest rates, supply by the amount of houses for sale. If you take a look at the interest rates, you'll see that they inched, stay in the same range, 6.81 from 6.78. If you go back over the last year, you'll see that rates are about in the middle of where they've been. They've been lower, they've been higher, but they're certainly in a range where buyers should be able to find a house that they can afford given the current inventory. That's the key part. What's the inventory look like? Well, if we go to that screen and we have it here, we'll find that the inventory remains flat. Here we are in February being updated from January, down a few houses, less for sale than January. Not uncommon based on the calendar, but you'll notice that while this inventory is higher than the last 2-3 years, these are all COVID years, we are still well below all of the pre-COVID years. This is the lowest year inventory on record. Only lower are those that were impacted during the COVID period. So what does that mean? Inventory is still tight. Home prices still can't go down. In some regards, buyers should be able to buy without worry that housing prices could go down in some regards. Now, that's not true in every market, but generally speaking, because it's so little inventory that you really can't go down. Now, Los Angeles and real estate markets are local. I use Altos Research. And Los Angeles market now is showing a 39, which if you look at this chart here, it's moved in the last few weeks and months from 37, 38, now 39, more of a seller's market. And I suspect that will continue. You know, we had 13,000 homes burned down. We have at least 6,500 of those people maybe looking to stay in Los Angeles. And so you have more home buyers than before, than otherwise might be. And you have less inventory. That's going to make inventory tight, be a seller's market where already a seller's market existed. So again, overall, we have a seller's market. As long as inventory remains tight, even in Los Angeles, prices cannot go down much. Okay, let's talk about the news. And Rocket Mortgage buys Redfin. Why might they do that? Now, Redfin has been nothing but a loser. From day one, they've taken in investment dollars, built a company worth about $2 billion or $1.75 billion, and lost money along the way. You might ask, well, how is it you can lose money nonstop and be worth that? Well, one reason why is you create a monopoly. In Redfin's case, they created an asset called buyers going to their website, traffic. And if you control a large amount of traffic, people will pay for that asset, number one. Number two, the losses they have are purchased by the new company and offset their taxes. Turns out Rocket Mortgage is profitable. They'll use the taxes from Redfin to offset their taxes. And so the only people losing this are us federal taxpayers. More than that, though, what happens is you have this big company now coming in to kind of leverage up the power of Redfin's monopoly. Let's take a look at the statistics. Redfin, Zillow in blue, their average monthly traffic is about 4 times Redfin and Rocket. And they have more agents, but they have less loan officers. But most importantly, look at the advertising spend. Rocket and Redfin together spend $913 million versus $175 million in a year. They spend about 4 times as much money. Now, the money buys customers. You know, normally in real estate, most customers are referred from happy customers. But with online companies that always give bad service, they have to buy almost every customer they ever get. And so Zillow and Redfin and Rocket Mortgage spend a fortune kind of fooling the next buyer into working with them. More than that, the money they spend on advertising is with real estate industry companies that will parrot their news reports and their own internal articles. So it looks like Zillow and Redfin are great companies reported by the press, when in reality, Zillow and Redfin wrote the articles themselves, and then their advertisers will run that as news, and unsuspecting buyers think they're a great company. So here you see the power here. What's happening now is Redfin's going to get about 4 times the money to make that portal more valuable. Not that it's better. Nobody really believes that, in any way, Rocket intends to make Redfin a better website. They already have engineers at Redfin. It's really all about taking the money and then buying out the competition and wiping out the competition financially. Take a look at operating cash flow, just to show you how bad Redfin was. They lost money last year, whereas CoStar, which is Homes.com, Zillow made $430 million, and Rocket made $860 million doing mortgages. So you can see the power of the finances are going to help Redfin. And then specifically, if you look at the advertising spend, you'll see Redfin, which, you spent money to create a halo effect for itself, as did Zillow. Almost every news article you read about Zillow or Redfin are in sources that they pay under their customers, and many of them are just their press releases redone. But look at the money that Rocket spends. And that's why you probably have a favorable impression of Rocket Mortgage, because they spend so much money. Every news article is going to be positive because all the news sources get advertising revenue from Rocket. That's kind of how news works today in business. So again, I do think overall what happens is you're going to see Rocket use its clout to leverage Redfin's monopoly on the web traffic and then compete with Zillow or put them out of business or something. I'm sure at the end of the day it'd be bad for consumers. Thirdly, the competition is being, the strategy they're using is to limit competition by getting a buyer who's looking at properties to immediately get contacted by Rocket Mortgage and or vice versa. Well, think about that. Buyers don't want other people contacting them. My experience with them is they go online to help themselves, to learn for themselves. They want to see what houses are available. They don't want agents to call them until they ask for the agent to contact them. They may want interest rate information, but they don't want the agent to contact them until they want to be contacted. And so what Rocket's going to do is fool them by sharing the data somehow, or capturing the data, or kind of tricking people into putting in the data, and the fine print will say, we share data with our partners. And so the whole concept here is to consolidate into one action, looking at a house in Redfin with getting a mortgage from Rocket. And customers have always resisted this. In the old days, when real estate companies would have a mortgage office in their office, and some customers went along with it. It worked out well for some. But the vast majority, in fact, in my experience, never more than 20% of customers ever chose to use the in-office brokerage. Why? Well, because people want the independence to choose who they want, when they want. They may have their own mortgage lender or their own real estate agent and don't want the company, the website, to tell them what they have to do. This is the strategy. And I think the thing that we've seen throughout time in internet is companies will violate privacy, then get caught, pay a small fine, and say, I'm sorry, we won't do it again. And Rocket Mortgage and Redfin together seek to share data, obviously, that's the goal, share a buyer from one to the other. And you're gonna see, I think, a very stringent sharing going on, and eventually customers will push back at that, is my sense. I don't think that's gonna work. It has never worked in this industry. Additionally, you can even read their own press releases where they talk about it. The CEO of Rocket Mortgage said specifically, together we'll improve the experience by connecting traditionally disparate steps of search and financing. Again, buyers don't want those steps connected or else they would connect them. Over time, they've thought they don't. And he also wanted to say is, we're simply allowing our broker network to gain access to a bigger ecosystem. Okay, so now they're going to not only share Rocket Mortgage with Rocket Mortgage people, they're going to share it with brokers on their system at other companies. And again, that's not what most home buyers want. Some will go along with it, but most won't. And just to quote, the CEO of Redfin, who's basically going to be all happy and smiles that keeps employees on board until they finally push him out, he says that had they not made this deal, they would have been stripped for their parts. What that means is the company has no intrinsic value. It doesn't do anything the customers really are willing to pay for. They're only willing to look at the property for their information. They really don't want, there's not enough desire for Redfin to provide a real estate agent to make a profit. There's not enough desire for Redfin to give them a mortgage lender to make a profit. And so they'd be stripped for parts because customers really reject the value proposition that Redfin wanted to create. And so now Rocket Mortgage is just going to throw more money at it and hope that they can turn that out. So How's that going to work out? I don't know. I think in the long run, it doesn't turn out to be good for customers. And I think that's always the thing that I'd point towards. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the news in Los Angeles. How's the city of LA doing? Are we really focused on rebuilding houses? I would say not. This story is really so funny, it could be an episode on The Simpsons. Why? Because literally the producer of The Simpsons, Rick Polizzi, he's forced to demolish his 24-year-old Simpsons-inspired treehouse. He had a treehouse, and the city of LA, or the county of LA, determined that it needed a zoning. It was so good, I guess. And so after 24 years and spending $40,000 on trying to keep it, he has to tear it down. And that just, to me, seems... I'm not such a big Simpsons fan, but that just seems like an episode of The Simpsons. The LA County and city are so broken that with all the things in their plate, they have to hire extra consultants for rebuilding. And everybody's busy. They're all backlogged. They have delays and these special... Somehow they have time to force this producer of The Simpsons. He must be worth millions of dollars, I would think. Responsible guy, I would say overall. He has to reduce his treehouse. I mean, really, that just seems like too much. Okay, speaking of too much to believe, and what should be a Simpsons episode, 3 years ago now, the city of LA passed the assessment, or what was it called? Measure ULA. And this was an idea to tax the rich because everybody hates the rich people. And by taxing the rich, houses over $5 million by 4% and more for houses over $10 million, you would tax the rich and make a lot of money and we'd spend it on homelessness. Well, not only did the city spend a fortune on homelessness and waste it all, but that tax didn't raise much because people found creative ways to avoid selling houses over $5 million. If it was close to $5 million, they'd sell something else, or they would not sell and rent because that 4% tax became a significant part of the cost. People talk about real estate commissions at 2.5% being significant. 4% on top of the normal taxes paid by homeowner are ridiculous. Well, even our city mayor, Karen Bass, Miss Uganda or Guyana or wherever she was at during the fires, she's considering advocating removing this tax. Now, again, this is big news. This is a mayor who loves taxes and hates rich people other than her campaign contributors. And she's thinking about removing it. They're talking about removing it, which means they get headlines to look like they're serious people, to look like they're doing something positive. In reality, you'd propose it. Why would you not propose it already? Why is it not happening already? We have houses to build. Why wouldn't you just waive the tax that has not generated money? The money it did generate was mostly wasted and political grift. And the answer is because the money that was collected is political grift. And that's what drives politics, unfortunately, in Los Angeles. In fact, where are we here? Interesting statistics on the rebuilding. It says that there are statistics that show that transaction volume of homes over the 5 million mark declined by a staggering 80% or more versus 41 to 61% for other Southern California markets that are not subject to the ULA tax. And it tells you then that it has really reduced the number of homes, which means that the taxes collected went down, not up. Not to mention the people who were not able to work on those houses, to improve them, to remodel them, to sell them, to move stuff in and out of them. And so this tax has just been a disaster every way you slice it. Speaking of disaster in the city of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Housing Homeless Services Authority, LASA, is also being considered being removed. Here was the city's big program to address homelessness, billions of dollars spent, money disappearing. We discovered last week on my podcast that the head of LASA, who gets some ridiculous salary, was paying money to a contractor where her husband worked. They're getting millions of dollars, all kinds of political graft. It's so bad that even this LA County is considering shutting it down. Now, it's fascinating that on a federal level, the Democrats are lined up against anything Trump wants to remove. And here we are in LA County considering removing a administrative agency because it's not effective. Now, we haven't done it yet. We don't move that fast in Los Angeles. We're talking about it. We're going to have meetings about it. But I think even LA County recognizes that the homelessness programs that they've put in place have been such a disaster that they're worried they're being removed. We talked last week a little bit about what is a federal program for housing, and I said that the best program sometimes is no program. The Trump administration focus is on increasing jobs and wages for American citizens. That's where the tariffs come into play, tax cuts, no tax on tips, allowing the goal at least, and you can argue whether it's good or bad or going to happen or not, but the goal is to keep more money in the pockets of Americans, and therefore they can afford to buy houses. And then Vice President Vance made another obvious claim last week. He said that, sadly, it's just too easy for non-citizens to compete with Americans for the limited housing we have. There's a clear link. More mass migration, higher housing prices is hurting working families across the country. Now, like everything that the administration says, of course, that gets yelled at as being racist and nativist and wrong and blah, 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 blah. And yet even the far left wing, the 100% Democrat-inspired Economist, had to write your guide to new anti-immigration argument. Nativists say migrants raise housing prices, cost money, and undermine economic growth. Do they have a point? And they went through, if you go through the article in detail, the answer is apparently they have a good point. In fact, you can even quote later in the article, it says that, as they quoted, James Cabral and Walter Steingrass calculated 1% in an American county's population raises the median rents by 2.2%. And the rise of cost makes housing less affordable for natives and also for purchase. And so here we have, even in a, certainly not a conservative publication, acknowledging that the obvious, more people competing for housing raises prices for housing. And so at a minimum, let's limit the competition for housing. People who are here legally entitled to compete for it. And the Trump administration has reduced the illegal immigration by 95%. I say that's a start. I mean, that's a great start. I'm not saying reduce legal immigration, but at least we should have people coming here who want to be part of our country and come in legally. And if they're going to compete with housing, then we all need to be competitive as far as that goes. Okay, so we covered the Redfin. We talked about the LA County and LA City policies and federal government. What are your thoughts? Put your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. I get emails every week from people who watch this or read the email. Like and subscribe if you like this. As always, I'm at Bill Gross Probate on social media. Make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.